All right, let's go ahead and get started. Cindy,
Here.
Arlie,
Here.
Mara. Is Mara here
Yeah.
today, students? Okay.
No, he's ready.
Cheyenne. Wait just a minute. Did you go last period?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Hannah,
Here.
Emily, Thomas,
Here.
Yabby, Ryan, Delgado, Brianna,
Here.
Jared,
Here.
Kenny,
Here.
Hannah, Kim isn't here yet, Ben,
Here.
Brooklyn Jones. I think she went to the bathroom. Caleb's here. Abby,
Here.
Lexia,
Here.
Ethan,
Here.
Ashley's here. Kyle absent today. Taylor,
Here.
Kimio,
Here.
Clay Pot. Where is Clay?
Right here.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Clay. Marshall Dillon,
Here.
Caleb, I know where he is, Nick, and Chris.
Here.
Okay, students, everyone listen up. Mr. Bryant is here today. And he's going to give you a sneak preview of the unit that we teach on discrimination, known as the Holocaust unit. Okay? He's going to use materials from The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. He's going to give you some history on the Nazis and why it all came about. So he needs your attention, and I need you to be respectful. Okay?
Good morning, everybody. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So today, our learning targets for today are, the first one is, I can make inferences from the text and use elements of a short story to explain the plot of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, the book we'll get to in a few minutes. And the second one is, I can make inferences from the text to predict the outcome of the story. And last period, we only had enough time to sort of watch the movie, so we may not get around to this learning objective, but hopefully we will. So before we get into anything else, I want to ask you to imagine with me that you have a daily food routine, and each day you're given only so much amount of food, and you're forced to eat that. And say that your daily routine consists of, in the morning, you get about 2 cups of this size of what is like cheap imitation coffee and tea with only 5 grams of sugar in it. For lunch, you get maybe this much soup with a few vegetables in it. And I mean, it's not really much. And so this is about the size of a loaf of bread. Well, for dinner, to hold you over for, I don't know, 8 hours until you wake up in the morning and get the coffee. You get about this much bread that's been molded, that's been tossed around on the ground, that's been prepared by the cook's hands, who probably are dirty and don't really care what your food looks like. Do you think that you could survive on that? No. No. I mean, just in normal circumstances, nobody could. But on top of that, this is the food rations of what the prisoners in concentration camps during the Holocaust, and we'll go further into explanation about the Holocaust and concentration camps in a minute. But concentration camps were run by Germany by a man named Hitler, and this was the prisoners' food for the day. And on top of that, they were working the land, they were out in the hot sun, and that's all the energy they had for the day to do their jobs. So now we'll go talk a bit further about the Holocaust. And so we have the Holocaust. The Holocaust started in 1940 and ended around 1945. So we have, who is this? Anybody tell me?
Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler. So how do you know that it's Adolf Hitler? What are some clues?
He was like the worst dictator ever.
His worst dictator ever. His mustache.
That
What else?
hair. That hair.
The hair. What about symbols on his arms? Anybody know what that's called? Nazi symbol. Swastika. So this is Adolf Hitler.
Is it still not?
No, it's not. Still back there. So what do we know about Adolf Hitler?
It was one of the most brutal dictators in the world.
And where was he a dictator at?
Germany.
Germany? You ever heard that same thing? Or anybody else? What else do we know about Hitler?
He didn't like Jews.
He didn't like Jews. Exactly. The Holocaust is basically a mass genocide, a mass killing of 6 million Jews.
Did he kill his mom because she was a Jew?
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah. What else?
His people were long every long.
Exactly. So he was out to create what's known as the Aryan race, and it's what you said. The Aryan race was Hitler's perfect people that he wanted to sort of create a new category of people that were young, strong, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men. And anybody else that didn't fit that category, they were exposed. So Adolf Hitler initiated the final solution, and in the final solution, that included the concentration camps. He wanted to create a perfect Aryan race, and so, as you said, the Aryan race was anybody who was young, strong, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy.
Hey, I got a question. Do you think that will plot thing up there is different from Israel or
So here we kind of have an image of a variety of boys and girls. So down here, I don't know if you can see this very well, but there's a picture of what looks like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. So he would probably make it. And he would probably be allowed to go into the concentration camps to be raised as part of the Aryan race. But I mean, look at these other kids. They're innocent, and they were most likely killed off. So, I mean, looking around the room here, how many of you, or how many of us do you think would be considered part of the Aryan race?
Not very many.
Exactly. Not very many. So, not very many. So, not very many of us. Not very many of us, guys, would be considered the Aryan race. So the final solution, let's see, to forcefully capture all of the Jews. The Germans went throughout the homes and the stores of the Jews, and they basically stole everything from the homes and the shops. They broke into their shops, they broke the glass, and they raided the streets and the homes of people, and they captured all of the Jews. So who is a Jew?
Isn't it somebody who celebrates the religion of Judaism?
Oh, okay. So we have who is a Jew? We talked about. So who else did he want to exterminate besides the Jews? Hitler wanted to exterminate political rivals, Jehovah's Witnesses, gypsies, homosexuals, and anyone who was sick, weak, hurt, or anyone who he deemed useless. He or his men. So what did he do with him?
Kill him.
Killed him. Put him in a gas chamber, he killed him. By putting him in a gas chamber, he put him again in the concentration camp. And in the concentration camps, they basically lived in overcrowded. If you've ever been to a camp before over the summer, it's basically an overcrowded camp cabin. They were only given one pair of clothes to wear. They never really were given time to take showers. They were given, as we've seen, the poor food rations that hardly any normal man could survive on. And so that's kind of what happened there. Again, the inmates were poorly fed. They were forced to work the land, and they were kind of treated like the dirt that they worked. They were stepped on. They were tormented. They were whipped. They were punished. They were forced to wear one set of clothes, and they were treated inhumanely with horrific punishments such as the gas chambers that you're talking about. Those who died of starvation, work, or illness had their bodies thrown into huge pits along with the bodies of others. So part of the work that the Jews were doing and the other Christians were doing is they were digging pits to throw the bodies of the dead people into. These people weren't given lovely ceremonies. They died of starvation and work, and they were tossed into large pits with the bodies of other people who had died. So the Jews were basically digging, the Jews and the prisoners were digging their own graves as they slowly died themselves. But Hitler, he wasn't so happy that things were going so slowly. And by things, I mean he wasn't so happy that people were dying off so slowly, because he wanted to capture more and more Jews, more and more prisoners, and put them in his camp. So what did he do?
I mean, I have a question. Did they get to sleep at all?
I would say they got to sleep, but it wasn't for very long, and it wasn't very comfortable. So the torture continues. What did Hitler do? the Nazis developed new methods of killing, such as the gas chambers, to kill thousands at one time. And we'll kind of see that in the second clip. But what they would do was they would tell those Jews they're going to get a shower, which to them was great because they never really got a shower. And what they would do is they would take hundreds of them and just stick them into a large chamber room. As we'll see here in a minute, I've got a picture. And they would tell them that they were going to take a shower. They would lock them in after closing a large metal door so they couldn't escape. And someone would be sitting on top of the chamber and would just pour the gas in and kill hundreds of them at one time. And then they burned the bodies of the people in what are called incinerators. And let me go ahead and pull up these pictures here. So why did the Nazis do this? Why did the Nazis do this?
picture of that one on the left?
I'll explain here in just a second. Can someone turn the lights off for me so we can see this better? So why did the Nazis do this? The Nazis did this because they absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, hated Jews. And so the picture on the left here is actually the gas chamber that I was talking about. It's just a large room with a metal door and a hole in the roof so they could pour the gas in. Here in the middle picture, you can kind of see that some of the prisoners are in striped pajamas, what looks like striped pajamas, and that's where the book gets its name. And finally, this one over here is, have you ever seen like in a TV show or something like in the morgue they have the metal trays that they pull the bodies out on? Have you ever seen that? That's kind of what that was. But they would sometimes put people who were alive, or they would put people who were dead, and they would shove them in these chambers. They would lock the metal doors, and they would burn them alive until they were nothing but bones. So it was horrible, horrible for them. And so now we get to the boy in the striped pajamas. Just some background information on it. Both the movie version and the book were set around 1945 after Hitler's concentration camps were already well established. One of Hitler's commandants, and the commandant is a head officer, he was asked to move himself and his family from Germany to Poland to run one of the concentration camps.
Can I stop you right there for just 1 second? Notice how Mr. Bryant put this in parentheses. How could he have done it another way? And what he did is fine. How could he have done it another way? Commas. And then when he puts it in those commas, what's it called? An appositive. But this is a really good writing craft to give that small definition to words. And notice it wasn't elaborate. It was just short and to the point. What a commandant was. Okay? And then he's going to do it again right here. He explains who Bruno is. And even though it's not hugged in by commas, it's still an appositive because it renames.
So we're introducing the book to a boy named Bruno who's 9 years old. He's a 9-year-old adventurous boy, and he's the commandant's son. And we'll learn more about him in the book here in just a second. I'm going to read out of it. And finally, one day Bruno stumbles upon a Jewish boy in striped pajamas. Yes.
So if Hitler had a son and he wasn't blonde hair, what about he could
Probably, yes. So one day Bruno stumbles upon a Jewish boy in striped pajamas with a number on it. Each of the Jews were given a number. They were often given a number on their uniforms, their one uniform they were given. And a lot of them had written upon their arms, like tattoos to their arms. And so,
can I stop?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Also, students, that number, that's what they became, basically, was a number. And
they weren't
don't-
given a name. They was basically,
Yeah.
they were a number and a face to the Germans.
And, you know, in our country, each of you have a social security number, which in a way is a little bit kind of scary.
Yeah. So we see that Bruno meets a boy who's in a concentration camp. And in the movie clip of it, you can kind of see that Bruno realizes, not Bruno, but Shmuel, the boy inside the concentration camp, realizes the seriousness of the situation. In the book, it doesn't so much hint at that. But on the other hand, Bruno is more clueless as to what's really going on. He just thinks that where Shmuel's at is just a fun place where he gets to hang out with his friends. So if someone will get the last 4 minute game, does anybody have any questions before we move on? There we go. All right. going to do now is just for 15 minutes, about 15 minutes, I'm going to just read a short portion of the book to you. And the portion that we're reading is when Bruno, the son of the commandant, first meets, the boy inside the concentration camp.
We
And
don't
then-
want to see any heads down.
So it says, when Bruno first approached the boy, he was sitting cross-legged on the ground, staring at the dust beneath him. However, after a moment he looked up and Bruno saw his face. It was quite a strange face, too. His skin was almost the color of gray, but not quite like any gray that Bruno had ever seen before. He had very large eyes, and they were the color of caramel sweet. The whites were very white, and when the boy looked at him, all Bruno could see was an enormous pair of sad eyes staring back at him. Bruno was sure that he had never seen a skinnier, sadder boy in his life, but decided that he had better talk to him. "I've been exploring," he said. "Have you?" said the little boy. "Yes, for almost 2 hours now." This is not strictly speaking true, though. Bruno had been exploring for just over an hour, but he didn't think that slightly exaggerating would be too bad of a thing. It wasn't quite the same thing as lying, and made him seem more adventurous than he really was. "Have you found anything?" asked the boy. "Very little, nothing at all." "Well, I found you," said Bruno after a moment. He stared at the boy and considered asking him why he looked so sad, but hesitated because he thought it might sound rude. He knew that sometimes people who were sad didn't want to be asked about it. Sometimes they'd offer the information themselves, and sometimes they wouldn't stop talking about it for months on end. But on this occasion, Bruno thought that he should wait before saying anything. He had discovered something during his exploration, and now that he was finally talking to one of the people on the other side of the fence, it seemed like a good idea to make the most of the opportunity. He sat down on the ground on his side of the fence and crossed his legs like a little boy and wished that he had brought some chocolate with him, or perhaps a pastry that he could share. "I live in the house on this side of the fence," said Bruno. "Do you? I saw the house once from a distance, but I didn't see you." "My room is on the first floor," said Bruno. "I can see right over the fence from there. I'm Bruno, by the way." "I'm Shmuel," said the little boy. Bruno scrunched up his face, not sure he heard the little boy right. "What did you say your name was?" he asked. "Shmuel," said the little boy, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What did you say your name was?" "Bruno," said Bruno. "I've never heard of that name," said Shmuel. "And I've never heard of your name," said Bruno. "Shmuel," he thought. "Shmuel," he repeated. "I like the way it sounds. It sounds like the wind blowing." "Bruno," said Shmuel, nodding his head happily. "Yes, I think I like your name too. It sounds like someone who's rubbing their arms to keep warm." "There are dozens of Shmuels on this side of the fence," said the little boy. "Hundreds, probably. I wish I had a name all of my own." "I've never met anyone called Bruno," said Bruno. "Other than me, of course. I think I might be the only one." "Then you're lucky," said Shmuel. "I suppose I am. How old are you?" he asked. Shmuel thought about it and looked down at his fingers, and they wiggled in the air as if he were trying to calculate. "I'm 9, he said. "My birthday is April the 15th, 1934. Bruno stared at him in surprise. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said my birthday is April 15th, 1934. Bruno's eyes opened wide and his mouth made the shape of a nose. "I don't believe it," he said. "Why not?" said Bruno. "Or why not?" asked Shmuel. "No," said Bruno, shaking his head quickly. "I don't mean I don't believe you. I mean, I'm surprised, that's all. Because my birthday is April the 15th, too. And I was born in 1934. We were born on the same day." Shmuel thought about this. "So, you're 9 too," he said. "Yes, isn't that strange?" "Very strange," said Shmuel. "Because there may be dozens of Shmuels on this side of the fence. But I don't think that I've ever met anyone with the same birthday as me before." "We're like twins," said Bruno. Bruno felt very happy all of a sudden. A picture came into his head of Carl and Daniel and Martin, his 3 best friends for life. And he remembered how much fun they used to have together back in Berlin, and he realized how lonely he had been without them. "Do you have any friends?" said Bruno, cocking his head a little to the side as he waited for an answer. "Oh, yes," said Shmuel. "Well, sort of." Bruno frowned. He had hoped that Shmuel might have said no, as it would have given them something else in common. "Close friends?" he asked. "Well, well, not very close, said Shmuel. But there are a lot of us boys our age, on this side of the fence. We fight a lot of the time, though. That's why I come out here, to be on my own. It's so unfair, said Bruno. I don't see why I have to be stuck over here on this side of the fence and why there's no one to talk to and no one to play with, and you get to have dozens of friends over there, and are probably playing for hours every day. I'll have to speak to my father about it. Where did you come from? Asked Shmuel, narrowing his eyes and looking at Bruno curiously. Berlin. Where's that? Bruno opened his mouth to answer, but found that he wasn't entirely sure. It's in Germany, of course, he said. Don't you come from Germany? No, I'm from Poland, said Shmuel. Bruno frowned. Then why did you speak German, he asked. Because you said hello in German. So I answered in German. Can you speak Polish? No, said Bruno, laughing nervously. I don't know anyone who can speak two languages, and especially no one of our age. Mama is a teacher in my school, and she taught me German, explained Shmuel. She speaks French, too, and Italian, and English. She was very clever. I don't speak French or Italian yet, but she said she'd teach me English one day, because I might need to know it. Poland, said Bruno thoughtfully, laying the word upon his tongue. That's not as good as Germany, is it? Shmuel frowned. Why isn't it, he asked. Well, because Germany is the greatest of all countries, Bruno replied, remembering something that he had overheard his father discussing with his grandfather on any number of occasions. We are superior. Shmuel stared at him but didn't say anything, and Bruno felt a strong desire to change the subject because even as he had said the words, they didn't sound quite right to him, and the last thing he wanted was for Shmuel to think that he was being unkind. Where is Poland anyway? He asked after a few silent moments had passed. Well, it's in Europe, said Shmuel. Bruno tried to remember the countries he had been taught about in the most recent geography class with her list. Have you ever heard of Denmark, he asked. No, said Shmuel. I think Poland is in Denmark, said Bruno, growing more confused even though he was trying to sound clever. But that's many miles away, he repeated for added confirmation. Shmuel stared at him for a moment and opened his mouth and closed it twice, as if he was considering his words carefully. But this is Poland, he said finally. Is it? Asked Bruno. Yes, it is, and Denmark's quite far away from both Poland and Germany. Bruno frowned. He had heard of all these places, but he always found it hard to get them straight in his head. Well, yes, he said, but it's all relative, isn't it? Distance, anyway, I mean. He wished that he could get off the subject, as he was starting to think that he was entirely wrong, and made a private resolution to pay more attention in the future in geography class. I've never been to Berlin, said Shmuel, and I don't think I've ever been to Poland before I came here, said Bruno, which was true because he hadn't. That is, if this really is Poland. I'm sure it is, said Shmuel quietly, although it's not a very nice part of it. No. Where I come from is a lot nicer. It's certainly not as nice as Berlin, said Bruno. In Berlin, we had a big house with 5 floors if you count the basement, and a little room at the top with a window. And there were lovely streets and shops and fruit and vegetable stalls and any number of cafes. But if you ever go there, I wouldn't recommend walking around town on a Saturday afternoon because there are far too many people there, and you could push from pillar to post. And it was much nicer before things changed. How do you mean? Asked Shmuel. Well, it used to be very quiet there, explained Bruno, who didn't like to talk about how things had changed. And I was able to read in bed at night, but now it's quite noisy sometimes and scary. And we have to turn all the lights off when it starts to get dark. Where I come from is much nicer than Berlin, said Shmuel, who had never been to Berlin. Everyone there is very friendly, and we have lots of people in our family, and the food is a lot better too. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree, said Bruno, who didn't want to fight with his new friend. All right, said Shmuel. Do you like exploring? Asked Bruno after a moment. I've never really done any, admitted Shmuel. I'm going to be an explorer when I grow up, said Bruno, nodding his head quickly. At the moment, I can't do very much more than read about explorers, but at least that means that when I am one myself, I won't make the mistakes they did. Shmuel frowned. What kind of mistakes? He asked. Oh, countless ones, explained Bruno. The thing about exploring is that you have to know whether the thing you found is worth finding. Some things are just sitting there, minding their own business, waiting to be discovered, like America. And other things are probably better off left alone, like a dead mouse at the back of a cupboard. I think I belong to the first category, said Smule. Yes, replied Bruno, I think you do. Can I ask you something? He added after a moment. Yes, said Smule. Bruno thought about it. He wanted to phrase the question just right. Why are there so many people on that side of the fence? He asked. And what are you all doing there? So you can kind of see that Bruno, from Bruno's standpoint, he knows that something has changed. Because back home in Germany, things were a lot louder. And what I would suggest that is that the Holocaust, from 1940 to 1945, had begun, and everybody was getting riled up, and they were ready to go and take over the Jews, and they were ready to go take over other countries, all under the power and dictatorship of Hitler. And you kind of see that Bruno's kind of like, and you'll see it more in the movie here in just a minute, Bruno's kind of confused because he realizes that being on this side of the fence isn't fun. Smule mentioned at one point that they fight a lot. Well, the prisoners, I mean, you expect that. They're under a lot of pressure. They're not being fed well. They're dying. So it's really no fun like Bruno thinks it is, but only Smule knows the truth. So now what we're going to do is we're going to watch a 15-minute or 4-minute clip that's basically the scene that I just read to you. And after that, we'll be writing a paragraph about the plot and the plot of the story. And I'll explain more about that in just a minute. So hopefully you kind of picked up on some details, some context details from the reading, and you'll pick up more here in the video. So here, kind of set up the scene. Bruno, Bruno's coming out of the back door of his house, and he was specifically told not to go out that back door by his father and his mother because they knew that he might stumble upon the concentration camp, which he does. So here we see Bruno having went through the back door, climbing out the window, and running into the forest. So someone, will you get the last one again, please? Thank you.
You can tell by looking at that little boy that he's probably from a wealthy family. The way he's dressed. Here he stumbled upon a fence, and this is one of the edge of the borders of the concentration camp. Now this fence sometimes has electricity juice to it.
And again, this is Bruno, and the boy he's getting ready to talk to right there is Smule. You can kind of see him past the crash.
be on my own. I'm Bruno. Schmoll. Sorry? I'm Schmoll. That's your name. Never heard of anyone called that before. I've never heard of anyone called Bruno. Schmoll. No one's called Schmoll. I live in a house. Back there. Have you got any food on you? No. Are you hungry? How old are you? 8. Me too. It's not there. You're being stuck over here on my own. Or you're over there, playing with friends all day. Play. Well, that number. Isn't it part of a game or something? It's just a number. Everyone gets given a different number. Oh, right. Then what happens? I have to go back now. Really? It was nice to meet you. Small. And you. Bruno.
So in that clip, you can kind of see the scene that we just read. And I think you pointed out that in the movie they say that they were 8, or in the book it was 8, and here they say they were 9. That's one of the differences between the movies. Okay. So in the book they said they were 9, and in the movie here they said they were 8. So that's one of the. You can kind of see that between the book and the movie there are some differences. You have a question?
It doesn't say that when they're born.
Yeah, it kind of looks at when they're born, and I mean they realize that they're both 8, but like you said, it doesn't tell us that they were born on the same day. So I'm going to show you a second clip, and just to kind of help you understand sort of what the plot of the story is, because I know that's not a lot of information to go on. But this is the second clip I'm going to show you is the end of the movie, and Miss Baumgartner has told me not to show you all the end of the movie because you're going to watch it go over the Holocaust and go over the story again in January. So this to kind of give you more of an idea of what the plot of the story is, and sort of as a teaser for this coming January. So just to set this video up, for a time now, it's been a couple of months, possibly I believe, Bruno has been going every day to see Shmuel, and they've become real close friends. And Bruno, one day that he goes out to see Shmuel, I think it's Shmuel has got a shovel, and they begin digging a hole and kind of clawing out a hole, and Bruno actually goes under the hole and enters the concentration camp, which is at Auschwitz. That's called Auschwitz concentration camp. And Bruno has disguised himself. He's gotten clothes from Shmuel, and he's put on the striped pajamas and a hat sort of disguise himself. So that's where this scene picks up. Right now they're being herded to take a shower. The showers we talked about, that's where they're going right now. They're being forced to go there.
So he snuck in and then he gets snuck in. They get out.
So here you can see his father, his mother, and his sister all trying to find him. The dogs were a search team, and here you can see his father in just a minute. There's his mother and his sister. And here again they're being herded into the shower. This is their living space. Before they go take a shower, they make them take all their clothes off, and you can kind of see how their living spaces are crowded.
are emaciated. You can see their rib cages.
That's his father. That's Bruno's father.
Is he a German soldier?
Yes, yes. What's the commandant? What is the leader?
They did, lock him in.
This is where I want you to stop and I think when we see his mother. Here she is.
So you kind of see that there's a frantic situation. They've been locked in the showers, and his father is desperately trying to get to the camp and stop the guards from executing the shower and killing Bruno and all the other prisoners in the process. So where we leave off is we see the father in the concentration camp. Bruno and Shmuel and a bunch of other prisoners have entered the showers, and you see that they were locked away behind that metal door. So that's where we'll leave it until January.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bryant, I think read the piece of poetry before they begin to write, and then they'll have the rest of the period to write.
So this is a piece of poetry about the
Listen up,
Holocaust.
please.
It's actually entitled The Holocaust. So it says, innocent people on a clear day are hoarded together and taken away. The people are scared about what will happen. They cry. But if you speak out, you'll be shocked. You'll die. Hoarded into a cattle car, no food, no water. The journey is days, it is so far. They ask, why do we deserve this? What did we do? The answer the Germans gave was untrue. With euphemisms and lies, how was anybody supposed to figure it out? The victims knew it was wrong, but people on the inside had doubts. They thought the Nazis were helping them through the hard time, but the real story was the Nazis were committing atrocious genocide. Upon arrival at the camps, the people went to the selectors. Mothers hid their children behind them for protection. If you went to the left, you were weak, young, or old. You get a shower, is what you were told. But it was not a shower. It was not a shower. Every death from the gas chambers gave the Nazis a sense of power. Don't get the wrong idea. This was no perk. If you messed up, you would get shot. Many died from malnutrition or sickness. Their bodies would start to rot. 11 million dead. Can you wrap that number around your head? That's the number of people in 143 Chiefs football stadiums. 143. This will never be okay, to no degree. It wasn't that great for those who happened to survive. Families wiped away. This was genocide, and I pray this won't happen again. This horrible, ruthless killing. It wasn't okay then. It will never be okay now. I can hardly react to what happened. I just say, wow. Anyone who says the Holocaust didn't happen, they're insane. Those people are ignoring an event that caused so much pain. Today, tomorrow, and forever, never forget. Never forget that you will have regret, because it can happen to you. And so there's one line in there that says some people ignore the Holocaust. There are people today still who believe that the events of the Holocaust, the concentration camps, the torture, never even happened. That it was all simply a myth. And I mean, even translating that to today, there are concentration camps today in North Korea, and I don't believe that the conditions the prisoners are living under there are as bad as they were when Hitler ran the concentration camps. Still, they're given a poor ration of food. They're still beaten, and their living conditions are very poor. And so, I mean, that's something to think about, and kind of bring it to a level here at school. You know, a lot of times schools have bullying in them, and though that's nowhere near to the extreme of what happened in the genocide, still you hurt people from bullying, and so I know that there are a lot of bullying campaigns, and I know that you've heard your teachers and stuff say to kind of like stomp out bullying, but I think this makes it more real. I mean, again, it's not to that same extreme as genocide, but still bullying is hurtful, and that's something to think about. So now what we're going to do is, if you'll pull out a piece of paper, and at the end of class, if you'll see your papers on your desk, the first question, and that's the main question that we want to get to today, says, based on the text that was read, oh wait, just a second, sorry. So question 1 says, based on the text that was read aloud to you, and the accompanying video clips of the text that was read to you, write one paragraph explaining the plot of the story, being short to incorporate 2 other elements of the short story. And so just real quick, can anybody tell me what the elements of the short story are?
Very quickly. You know these frontwards, backwards, inside out. Elements of the short story. Elements of plot.
What about characters? Well, that's included in exposition. So, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So you can incorporate those things into explaining the plot. You can incorporate the background of Bruno and Smule, who were from opposite families. I mean, Bruno was from a German family. Smule didn't really have a family other than people that were in the concentration camp with him. You can incorporate that. Anything that we learned about the Holocaust, you can use to explain the plot of the story. But just make sure you incorporate 2 other elements when explaining the paragraph. And make sure you write it in paragraph form and just kind of hint to this is exposition, this is rising action, or whatever you're going to use.
It was called the what now? What's that towards the what?
Holocaust. And if you need to know how to spell Bruno or Smule, there's Bruno, Smule, and then I'll write the Holocaust up here too. And I know I mentioned the specific name of the concentration camp. It was Auschwitz, but don't worry about trying to spell that because it's really hard to spell. Just put that they were at a concentration camp and that'll be fine. If you want to use that. It was in Germany, or no, it was in Poland, yeah.
Pardon? Oh, okay. So then write your, he just read a portion from the book, okay? And the portion he read from the book is about the portion that you saw from the book, okay? When we watch the video in its entirety in January, you'll understand it. Okay.
Here's how to spell comment on it.
This story has some real irony in it. True irony.
Does anybody need the question pulled back up?
whole year anyway. Okay, if you, I know, but it's pronounced Congo. The German language is very harsh. Okay. Well, let's get back with that. Uh-huh. We can go back to that. Can you go back to the question?
Yeah.
Here you go.
Just focusing on number one. Yeah, we can go ahead and do number two. We have time to talk about it. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and do number two and number three about drawing an illustration of how you believe the movie will end, how you believe the story will end for Bruno's family and Smule, you can go ahead and do that. And then number three is simply explaining your illustration that you drew in number two.
Wait, does Shmuel have a, is it SPH or not? Is it there on board?
I think it's S-H-M-U-E-L.
And in the movie, I think the little boy actually pronounces his name Schmal, doesn't he?
Schmal.
Almost like it's small. Again, the German language is, kind of.
Very
It's,
Yeah.
Smule is this spelling over here on the, all right, sorry about that. Any questions? So you can continue working for the remainder of the period, but have a good day. Just leave your papers on the desk, please. And again, you all have a good day, and thank you.